Good evening, everybody. Better late than never, Tony, I guess. Celtic 3, Rangers 3, 5-4 on penalties. Reaction: Celtic are the League Cup champions. They defeated their greatest rivals, Rangers, and a penalty shootout 5-4, as I said. Schmeichel and Maeda are the Hampden heroes after shootout win. Tony, what's your take on that 120 plus minutes? Probably give or take 130 minutes of football this afternoon / evening / night.
I think the words never in doubt are not applicable here, Ryan. Celtic did it the hard way, didn't they? They had to win that match 3 times. But on the plus side, they did it. Came from behind, go 2-1 ahead, they go 3-2 ahead with 3 minutes to go, and then they go and win it in penalties. And they were the only team that looked capable of scoring in extra time. So, we spoke about that big game mentality. They do have it, and it doesn't matter how you win. As the manager, I think, said at the end, it's all about being on the podium. Celtic were on the podium. It's a classic final. It's going to go down as an absolute classic. It's only a classic when you win.
Yeah, absolutely. 119 titles, 119 trophies Celtic have got in their illustrious history. They overtook Rangers this afternoon, who were on 118. Yeah, it's been a very successful day all round. I thought after about 41 minutes into the game, was it going to be one of those days? Greg Taylor passes the ball to Nedum Bajrami. Or is it Igimani?
I'm pass it to Bajrami.
Bajrami
fed Igimani. He took the shot, and then he was on anti-profit from the.
Yeah, it was a good parry. A good parry from Schmeichel, but he could do nothing with the rebound, and Bajrami scored. And I thought, Tony, just coming on that point, or Celtic rather, they were really good in that game. Apart from that, without doing too much with the ball, they were controlling things. I thought Greg Taylor was actually having a good game before that mistake, but. If you let in your greatest rivals with a chance, they're going to take it, aren't they? And they certainly did through Bajrami.
Yeah, I think it's kind of inexplicable the way he passed it across the box. Kind of don't know if he did it blindly, but it certainly wasn't well executed. The intended recipient of the ball, so but he atoned for it, didn't he? You don't shoot, you don't score, and got a deflection, but it still ended up in the back of the net, and that's all that's important. And he was actually one of Celtic's better players in the first half, but you're judged on making mistakes like that. And then early in the second half, he slips, and Rangers have that 4-1. And how they never scored from that, I will never know. And that could have put the game to bed, Ryan.
There's an asterisk next to that 4-1 because the asterisk is it's Cameron Carter-Vickers. He is very much the last line of defence before the goalkeeper. Yeah, a massive intervention. Just looking back on that, and I think in rewatches of the game, you're going to realise how important that block was from Cameron Carter-Vickers, just in terms of the overall style of the game, because Celtic shortly after that got back in level terms.
Point of the game for me, Ryan. He doesn't
big moments.
He doesn't make that intervention Celtic go 2 down. Because they had 2 players, Czerny and somebody else, I think, who Igimani maybe waiting to put it in the net. So, and I didn't see Celtic coming back from that, but somehow they dredged their way back into the game. And as I say, Taylor shoots, deflected, scores, and then Dyson Maeda with a goal for the ages. Honestly, his take of the high ball, I mean, he charges it down, and then chases after his own charge down. It's coming out the air, it's spinning out the air, he controls it and he buries it, and it's an absolute classic goal. It's absolutely fantastic. It's I would have loved that to have been the winning goal. Alas, it wasn't, because Celtic did what they did against Aberdeen, conceded. I mean, and I don't like having a go, but Arne Engels defending for the Diamandi goal is nothing short of criminal for me. It's criminal. It really is. It just can't happen. Can't be allowed to happen. And then you go and think you've won it again by getting your noses in front. 87 minutes with Kuhn. Arne Engels picking Kuhn out. The one constructive thing that he did do, or 2 actually, because he scored a penalty as well. And then they end up another bread and butter cross into the box. It's a cracking ball from Czerny. Don't get me wrong. It's on the money. And Danilo again. You can't always keep digging yourself out of these holes, Ryan. One day you will come a cropper, but they didn't today, thankfully. So we're all smiles.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg Taylor made that mistake for the first goal, for Bajrami's goal, but he made up for it with the equaliser. Took a bit of a deflection, the shot, but it doesn't matter. They all go in, they all count the same. not dissimilar to the goal that he scored against Rangers in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup back a couple of years ago.
Yes.
I believe that there was a deflection on that shot to it. It wasn't a pretty goal by any means, but they all count, and I think that showed character from Greg Taylor, because he was getting quite a bit of stick after that goal conceded, but he certainly. He was delighted when he scored, and you could see the sort of relief on his face, but the delight that he'd scored that equaliser. It could be one of his last ever Celtic Rangers games. That contractual situation rumbles on, so it was important for him to sort of save face, and he certainly did that on the day. Then with Dyson Maeda, I think as bad as Greg Taylor's mistake is, Nico Raskin's is just as bad in terms of that. I think it's a header directly into the path.
Similar, isn't it? And they were similarly punished for it. And at that moment in time, you thought Celtic were going to steamroller Rangers, at least score a third, make it 3-1, and maybe go on from that, because there was only one team in it. So they have to put them away in these moments, I think, because again they've let them back into that game twice. And Rangers at those moments in time where they came back into the game look dead in their feet, and you have to give them credit for that, because they did rise to the occasion twice and got 2 equalisers. And as I say, it's just Celtic's winning mentality that's it's unbelievable. That drags them through this, and that's what the manager's banging on about today, and a few of the players, because a lot of the players were off their game today, Ryan. They weren't. They didn't come with their A game. We were talking about them turning up. A lot of those players failed to actually turn up today and play a full 90 minutes, or play, what we would deem a normal game or a great game. So I salute the fact that Celtic are able to do this and just grind it out and find a way. Mm-hmm. It's the hallmark of Brendan Rodgers' teams, thankfully.
I was saying before the game, I was saying it to both people that I was speaking to, and I think I believe I said it on the pre-match show as well, that Austin Trusty was going to have a big part to play in this game. Turned out he didn't. He was taken off at half-time, but we all thought that there was an injury, maybe potentially, with Austin Trusty, until we found out post-match that Brendan Rodgers took him off tactically, which is a bit of a surprising move. He's played every minute that he's had available to him. It's not as if he gets taken off with for any tactical switch as any other time, but it was clear that he wasn't doing what Brendan Rodgers wanted of him, and he wasn't breaking the lines effectively, but more so he could rely on Scales to come on and do that, and that's why it's so important that he's in and around the team, isn't it, Tony?
I'm happy he told us that, because you could have fudged that question, Ryan, and made up something about him.
He said he got a knock,
something that kind of he took a knock, but he was brutally honest, and there's this ruthless side to Brendan Rodgers. If you're not doing what he wants, you will not play in his team. So clearly he's seen enough and Trusty in that first half to say, it's not happening for you, big man, off you come. And he entrusted Liam Scales with the second half duty, and Liam Scales, the first involvement, I think, was a flash a header wide, which we actually thought was a good opportunity, didn't we? As a chance, and he might have done better with it, but maybe that's nitpicking. But Scales was fine, okay, decent enough. He's played the second half of a Celtic Cup winning team, so I'm trying to be as positive as possible as I can about, i.e. the result. It's about winning, it's about being on the podium, as the manager says. But if you're going to dig deeper, which we're trying to do here, a lot of those performances left a lot to be desired today, Ryan.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that you're saying there. From the 60th minute to the 75th minute, just having a wee look at the timeline here, I thought that Celtic were completely dominant in the game, and they probably could and should have scored more goals. For the first time in the game, I think that the Spurs game was beginning to show on the Rangers players. Those players that had started against Spurs were really, really struggling. But they got that second wind with that goal from Mohamed Diamande. Really poor defending by Arne Engels. He allows himself to be turned. And, it's one of those ones where I think Kasper Schmeichel would save it, but Kyogo gets a touch on it, and it totally manipulates the ball. It takes it past the goalkeeper. But a really poor goal to concede all in.
Engels was culpable because he allowed himself to be turned. But you know what really annoyed me, Ryan? See them marking at the corner. It was non-existent. They
switched off, didn't they?
They totally switched off. And that annoyed me more. Well, not annoyed me more, but there was nobody shutting it down, nobody closing space, and then Diamande spins Engels as if he's not there, and obviously there's a deflected touch from Kyogo, fine. Again, you don't shoot, you don't score. But excuse me, There was no hint or whiff of defending about that. Didn't want to keep, there was no hunger or enthusiasm to keep the ball away from Celtic's goal at a critical time because Celtic were well on top. And adrenaline carries you through those moments, Ryan. You saw what that meant to Rangers. They got a lift from it and they were dead on their feet at that point. Had it gone 3-1, you wouldn't have batted an eyelid. But from that moment on, you're thinking, my goodness, you've just shot yourself out by switching off at the corner and then allowing the guy to easily turn and shoot a goal. And you're right, Casper Schmeichel would probably saved it had it not taken the deflection off Kyogo. Fine, that happened.
It's Kyogo making a nuisance of himself in the wrong position, in my opinion. If he does that in the other end, he's a hero because he's nipped in front of the shot. But because he's trying to defend, he defends it like a striker, which is not good. And he takes it off of Casper Schmeichel because the deflection, it takes it totally wrong sides him or whatever. It totally bamboozles him and he can't get on the end of it. I don't think that Casper Schmeichel could have done anything with the goal, apart from maybe perhaps Danilo, if you're nitpicking. But we'll get on to talking about that goal in a wee minute. First of all, we need to talk about Nicholas Kuhn's goal, which I think many of us thought was going to be the winner on the day, the way that it was celebrated. Maybe that was to the detriment of the team, the way that they celebrated that game. They took their foot off the gas. They allowed Rangers, I think it was 20 minutes from kickoff to go and score. It felt like from one end to the other very, very quickly from kickoff. But it was 20 seconds. Nicholas Kuhn, it's great play from Arne Engels down the wing. He goes from zero to hero very, very quickly in this game. He was definitely involved. That's something for sure. He didn't hide, and that was maybe one thing that we could have launched at him or lobbied at him. But he did try and make things happen in the midfield, good or bad. Gets that pass to Nicholas Kuhn. Nicholas Kuhn with a great finish in his first goal involvement against Rangers. He had that assist that was cruelly ruled out for offside, rightly, but cruelly ruled out for offside. But he got his first goal contribution, and now nobody can sort of put that against him that he hasn't done it against Rangers because he scored a massive goal there.
Yeah, he did. But you say 20 seconds later, your defending or lack of is exposed again. And again, it's a bread and butter. It's on the money. The cross is on the money. I get that. It's a decent ball in from Tierney. But that should be shut down as well, Ryan. The supply to someone like Tierney, Rangers are going for broke at that point. And as you say, he scored in 87 minutes. You're expecting to see the last 3 minutes, plus the 6 that were added on, out. They couldn't do that. And, again, Rangers get a second wind from that. And then going into extra time, they were hanging on for penalties, especially that second period of extra time. When Vi came on, Celtic looked a wee bit more assured going forward. And then obviously James Forrest came on and you'd get in. I mentioned to you off air before we came on, but I thought Adam Maeda, when they came on, got some real territorial advantage. His link-up play, his hold-up play was terrific. He was in the mood, Adam Maeda, and you made advances up the park. He got you territory. Whenever he got the ball, it stuck. And I really liked that. So there were certain things that happened that were good. It's a real mixed bag. Biggest thing about today is they've won the cup. You try not to be too critical, but if we're analysing the performance per se, it's been Celtic of late, hasn't it? It's been a bit patchy, bit wobbly, and I think they got away with it today because they've got that winning mentality. They just again, they bring it to the fore and bring it to the table, that they just find ways of grinding it out and doing it, even when they're not playing well. They've got ability to play through it.
I believe that the sign says by any means necessary, and that was the way that Celtic won it today. As we spoke about, Danilo got the equaliser again for Rangers. There was another equaliser in the game. Tierney gets a lovely ball into the box. Maeda maybe sleeping a little bit. That's one moment that he allows Tierney to cut in and put that ball into the box. It's a tremendous ball and a great header from Danilo. Maybe a couple of question marks on Casper Schmeichel, should they save it? But there is so much pace on the ball that it doesn't really matter that it's so central. It's a difficult one to save, in my opinion.
The direction's on the ball, isn't it? It is on the money. But again, it should be cut out at source, and then there should be guys in there to deal with that as it's coming across. Maybe even the goalkeeper could have came and dealt with it. I'm not too sure, but it was very close, wasn't it? And all he has to do is guide it. The pace is on the cross, and it's like yards from goal, isn't it? You're not missing that.
No, and it was a good header from Danilo, and he had the desired effect for Rangers. He also scored a penalty for Rangers as well.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about those penalties? Because I think you
Because they
can.
were great.
I think you can. It's spotless, absolutely spotless. But I think from full time to penalties, you don't really need to talk about that in between because there was nothing in the game. There was potentially that moment that Scales had with Czerny. That's it's going to be the talking point. You're going to get that on Ref Watch all day tomorrow. It doesn't matter because Celtic are on the other end and the League Cup winners. So you can talk about decisions, but Celtic took their chances today and they took their penalties when it came to them as well. It will be a sideshow. It will inevitably be a sideshow, but at the same time, Celtic have done their job.
Nobody remembers how you played in cup finals unless you're absolutely scintillating. This will go down as a cup final for the ages and a classic. It's a classic in terms of the scoreline. In terms of the amount of football that was played, you probably beg to differ. But as you say, Celtic looked the team that were going to win it in extra time if anybody was going to win it. Rangers were kind of hanging on for penalties after our midweek exertions against Tottenham. Get all that. But 5 tremendous penalties from Celtic, so Aramida, and they're going second, so the pressure's on Celtic up until
They're going second, and they're at the Rangers end as well, which is it's something that you've got to take into account too. I think that momentum can swing one way or the other, even with the coin toss. The fact that I was quite surprised that maybe the crowd didn't have more of a bearing on that because it was quite clear that Rangers would win the coin toss, but you didn't hear any big roar from the Rangers end at all. But there was a lot of noise, but Ida had to step up, and my goodness, he did.
Ida, McGregor, Engels, Hatate, Maeda in that order, and they went up and hit 5 exemplary penalties.
There's not even one that Jack Butland can get close to because all of them are perfect.
I think everybody had that kind of when Engels walked up. I think everybody was like, "Oh no," had that foreboding sense of doom because nothing much came off for him. But what a penalty! It was really cool, So that in itself shows bravado. But Ida's led the way. First penalty, 1 down in a shootout, go and slots it. You know what I mean? Well, McGregor was going to score, and all the penalties were terrific.
Maeda in a post-match interview saying he scuffed his penalty. He's learning English pretty quickly, as Dyson. It doesn't matter. It was quite a good scuff, if you ask me, because he said.
So it hit the net. A good penalty is one that hits the net, Ryan. Doesn't matter if it goes under the keeper, through his legs, or if it hits the net, it's a good penalty. And again, I say it's a classic match, but only if you win. If Celtic had lost in penalties, I don't think I'd have been sitting here saying it was a classic match. You'd be sick, you'd be scunnered, and all of those kind of words that you'd be down in Dutch. But you're cocky and delighted because you've won, and we've won despite not playing very well. I don't know what it is. Sometimes they just Hampden, I don't know, is big, fast, expansive greenery, but sometimes they don't turn up. This is one of those days when they never really turned up at Hampden, but they still managed to find a way to beat a rejuvenated Rangers. And that's important. And I think that it's the mood music that would have happened had it gone the other way.
Yep, and I think that'll be the most disappointing thing for Rangers. Because in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I don't think they'll have a better chance of beating Celtic because they were not at the races. Well, they were at the races because they did get 3 goals and they won the penalty shootout. That deserves some credit in the bank. But in terms of that football, that free-flowing football that we've seen against the likes of Ross County, etc., the first half of Ross County, few and far between over the past month or so. That's maybe something that needs to be addressed going forward. A couple of changes maybe to the team. I'm not so sure. But at the end of the day, it's a cup game. It's a knockout. It's knockout football, and Celtic showed that at this level there is no better. There is no better team in Scotland than Celtic at this level when push comes to shove.
Distribution improved the second half, Ryan, because it was diabolical in the first half, and that's not me being over egging it. Or the distribution and the passing in the first half was diabolical. So it had to get better. It did get better, and then as the game wore on, I thought the likes of Hatate had a good extra time. Kuhn came into it more and more, didn't he? And Bernardo, for the time he was on the pitch, I thought was actually decent. But again, I think the manager reckoned after 60 odd minutes, right, he's ran his race and takes him off. But you've won the cup, great, but you and I both looked at each other and said, we need more from Arne Engels. We need more. He's still acclimatising to the rough and tumble, the hustle and bustle of the Scottish game. I get that, but for a big guy, he's dispossessed and he falls on the floor a lot for me. When
He
I
also
think he
believes
should be
that
more robust.
he also believes that he's got more time on the ball
Yeah.
than, and I don't know if that's. I'm not going to put it down to arrogance or anything like that. I think it's just somebody that doesn't understand the geography of Scottish football in particular. You will get no time on the ball. You need to, despite it not being a top 5 league. I know we played in the Bundesliga. Maybe he got a bit even a bit more time on the ball in the Bundesliga, which would be quite surprising. But he needs to. He needs to do with some things with a spring in his step. I need to see the Engels that played against Hearts, the one that played against Slovan Bratislava, the one that came on against Rangers. And this is a guy that scored one of the important penalties and got an assist for Kuhn's goal. So there will be people in the comments and they will say that, right, you're being too harsh on him. But for £11 million, and I will bring up the price tag because, he should have been starting today. Arne Engels should be starting today. He should be one of the first names in the team sheet. The reason he's not is because he's not performing at the level that Celtic expect him to. That's why you don't sign £11 million players to sit on the bench. He got the assist, he got that penalty, but you know what? And the actual play on the park, I thought he really did flatter to deceive, in my opinion.
To go, Roy Keane, it's a derby. It's a Celtic Rangers game. You have to impose yourself in proceedings. And you're coming on to make an impact. And for a while, we had a negative impact until we set up Kuhn's goal.
Which shows character from him.
Correct.
But you've got to be objective. And we're being objective. We call it out when we see it.
So
But when
he did that very well. But there were other things you were like, Arne, come on. I'm talking about basic control. No, running the ball out the park or not being able to pass to somebody who was, within yards of him. And you're just expecting a bit more. I'm expecting a bit more. I'm talking as myself. Celtic supporters might think you're being tough, but it's a Celtic Rangers Cup final. There's silverware at stake here. You're not playing Ross County where you can maybe get away with it and get carried by others. You were a vital cog in that midfield. But I will give him his dues as well because he stood up when he took a crucial and pressure penalty and it was like shelling peas. It's just like, no bother, I'll do that. So I'm highlighting the 2 good things that he did, but in amongst those 2 good things were other things that you're saying to yourself, come on, because you are a better footballer than that. I was left with more a sense of frustration because he's far more technically gifted than what he showed out there against Rangers. And this was against a Rangers team who, at that moment in time, were there for the taking and it didn't have to go to penalties. Just a wee bit more composure, a wee bit more, I'm not... And you can't expect to have time on the ball in a Celtic Rangers Cup final. It's just not going to happen. So that's why you're looking for him to be more spatially aware and, take care of the ball. Because he can do it. He's done it at the highest level in the Champions League. So that's all we're saying.
Bit of the Jekyll and Hyde with him, to be honest with you. I want to see more from him. Yeah. I know he's a good player. We've seen it before. But I think that's maybe where the disappointment comes in because we've seen it. We've seen it from Arne Engels. We know that he can be good. But
I'm not exempting the captain from today either.
No.
Because I thought the captain was poor too. And Hatate was poor for large periods, but kind of grew into it, near the end and then in extra time. He played in a beautiful ball to Engels who should have scored the winner. Mm-hmm. Takes a terrible touch. I'm talking about things like that. Takes that in his stride, he's got a clean strike at goal.
Yep.
And that's the frustrating thing for me, Ryan, because it's there. Or it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go back onto the positives? I think we've had our Engels things. We need to delve back onto the track that Celtic have won the League Cup, and I think we need to talk about Kasper Schmeichel. I think we do, because despite what you might think about, Danilo's goal or that, he came up, he turned up when it counted, when it most mattered. When Ridvan Yilmaz stepped up to take the fourth penalty, Rangers' fourth penalty out of 5. So it was James Tavernier that scored his. Almeida then scored. Yanis Hadji scored. Cal McGregor equalised. Danilo scored. Arne Engels equalised. Yilmaz, the Rangers left back, who's been in and out of the squad this season due to injury. It's been him and Jeffy that have been fighting it out for that spot. He stepped up. I had a funny feeling. I had that feeling, you know when it's a defender taking one. You're like, I wonder why he's taking it, and why is Dessers not taking it? Why is these other players that are on the park? Why they not taking it? I seen it. I was watching it on the big screen as well, and he wasn't a player. Now, maybe I'm just a tad bit biased, but he didn't strike me as a player that looked confident that he was going to score his penalty. He was shaking his head. He had this sort of negative look on his face as he was going up to take the penalty. Kasper Schmeichel maybe got in his head a bit. Kasper Schmeichel was trying to get in Yanis Hadji's head. Yanis Hadji sat him down, to be fair to him, to his credit, and then was giving him a bit back. I wonder if Kasper Schmeichel maybe got in Yilmaz's head, and that was it was a great save from Kasper Schmeichel.
I think he tried the mind games in every Rangers player that went to take a penalty, didn't he? He was out at the edge of the box and giving it the verbals, and which is fine. If it puts somebody off, then and he saves one, and it turns out to be a crucial save, then he did. And it was, there's always going to be a fall guy in a shootout, and it was Yilmaz. Decent save as well by Schmeichel. And at a crucial time, because you can go ahead and there's one penalty left after that. You're taking it to win. Go on.
I'd just like to bring up this comment from Kenny Dalglish Senior. Ryan Tavernier took a penalty to get real. There's a slight difference with Tavernier taking a penalty as a defender and Ridvan Yilmaz taking a penalty. Tavernier is their designated penalty kick taker. He's also their designated set piece taker, so he takes their corners and free kicks. One that I thought he should have done better with. Was it in the second half? I believe that he put right over the bar. I was like, this is Tavernier's area. He always seems to score set pieces against Celtic, or it seems to feel that way for the past 3-4 years. He'll always have his say. But with Yilmaz, it was a bit surprising seeing him come up and taking the penalty, which shows character from the player. But I just thought that maybe one of their attackers would come on and take one. But then again, Jack Butland went up and took the fifth as well.
Look at their penalty takers. It's surprising, isn't it, that Danilo didn't take one, Dessers didn't take one.
Danilo did take one.
Oh, sorry, Danilo. I meant Dessers. So I want my strikers to take penalties. I know it's not for everybody, but if I'm a striker, I'm thinking I'd be confident enough from 12 yards, So you would ask the question about why Dessers didn't take, but Philip Clermont, I believe, said we'd been practicing penalties, hadn't he? And he'd had his 5 decided.
Yeah, I remember him saying that on Friday as well. Yeah.
So they were clearly the guys that did well. Might shock you to learn that Jack Butland and Yilmaz are in that, but if they feel confident enough, then so be it, and they did well, then of course they're going to take it. But I don't know, I'm always a lover of my strikers hitting penalties. I don't know, I always feel more comfortable when they step up to take it.
So just looking at the way, and I think it's important to talk about the penalties, because that's where the game was won and lost decisively, or essentially. You look at the players that took the penalties. So you've got Adam Ida, Celtic striker, taking the first one. You've then got Cal McGregor, Celtic captain, taking the second one. You've got Arne Engels, record signing, taking the third. Rio Tati, second behind Cal McGregor in penalties. And then Diaz Maeda, who's an attacker, who's already scored in the game. That's 5 players of real character that stepped up.
Attackers, who guys who are good strikers of the ball. So that to me stands to reason, and it's no surprise that they've all scored, is it? Because with exemplary penalties. So I just every penalty taker that went up, I was quite happy with it. I didn't even wince when Arne Engels went up. Lots of Celtic supporters, we were beside a lot of them, and they were like, "Oh no, they had a foreboding sense of doom about it." But
there was wincing when Diaz Maeda went up to take the decisive one. There was, and I looked behind. You can see where we were situated. You can see the hospitality fans, and they all had the same expression as if it's Diaz Maeda taking a penalty. Can he keep his cool?
I had no qualms about that, because the guy was confident as well. He scored a wonderful goal, and he was kind of probably feeling, at the top of his game and thinking, I can do this. He's admitted on there that he scuffed it, but decent scuff to me. It's that right in the corner, and he sent the keeper the wrong way. So, as I say, I look at those 5 penalty takers, and I expect them to score. And I knew Engels would take a cracking penalty because he's quite cool that way. as I say, I've no doubt that Engels will come good as a player for Celtic. I have no doubt about that in my mind because I've seen it. But I think, but as I say, and I mentioned it, and Alistair Johnston was off it today. Trusty was clearly off it in the eyes of the manager because he got hooked at half time. Cameron Carter-Vickers was the glue that held the defence together. Kasper Schmeichel, when called upon in the penalty shootout, has a match-winning, cup-winning penalty. You go into the midfield, Hatate grew into it, but wasn't great for large chunks of the game. Bernardo I thought was decent, but again, the impact sub thing with bringing on Engels for him, I would have kept Bernardo on if it's just be told. But McGregor was off it. Maeda had moments, some good, some bad. Kyogo was largely anonymous, wasn't he? To be fair. And Kuhn flitted in and out, but he always looked like he was going to cause... He was a menace without being, in it all the time, but he needed to be watched.
Yeah, with Kuhn, I think he needed a prod in the right direction. The fact that he needed to be told almost that, listen, Kuhn, you have the beating of Jeffy. You need to... And we were speaking about this pre-match. We were like, that's an area, or pre-match in terms of some of the videos earlier on in the week. We were saying that's an area of which Celtic can exploit if they've got a one-on-one. And there was respect given to Kuhn in two instances today. I noticed one, Jeff to get taken off.
Yeah,
that was an admittance that he was getting the runaround by Nicholas Kuhn. And two, they started to double up on Nicholas Kuhn because they realised that one-on-one he's going to scorch you, and that's just what he's going to do.
Every team does that now to Kuhn, don't they? They're starting to double up because they know he can hurt you. But he always threatened, and he always looked to beat his man. He always tried to do something whenever the ball was shunted out to him. So I thought that he was in it enough for me, and he got his reward for that perseverance when Engels squared it to him and picked him out, and he's slammed it home. But so I've no real complaints per se because they won the cup. They're on the podium, as the manager says, but we're analysing the match that's unfolded in front of us. We are talking about individual performances, and it's the team collective winning mentality that's got them through this, Ryan. They just refuse to yield, regardless of the situation. They've just got big game and big mindset and a huge winning mentality at the club, and they just love winning, and it doesn't matter how they do it. They get there in the end, and I think today was one of those days. They got there in the end, and you'll take that all day long. But is it cause for concern? Not per se, but they need to up their game, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's been a drop-off in the last few performances. Ross County game apart, hasn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there has. There absolutely has. And you would be... I'm actually going to come out and say you'd be naive to suggest otherwise, because there has been a drop-off. I've watched every game that Celtic have played this season. I know when Celtic have played well and when they haven't hit the standards. They didn't hit the standards on Tuesday night in Zagreb. I don't think they necessarily hit the standards today, but they were better than their opponents when it counted, both in normal time for the vast majority of it and in the penalty shootout. When push comes to shove, this team can face adversity and come out on the other end with victories and getting through games. It was just about winning today, and they got that done.
Yeah, they can stare it down. Stare at adversity in the face and stare it down and still triumph. And I think that's as good as Rangers can throw at them today.
But I would also caveat that with the fact that I don't think Celtic can play like that at Ibrox. I think it'd be a very different story at Ibrox. They're going to need to up their game at the turn of the year against Rangers at Ibrox and I think that it's good that they've had this, because I think they've needed this sort of game to really shunt them in the right direction. As much as the nothing each, a draw was a good result away from home against Zagreb. As it goes to show, it wasn't really a great result when you look at their result yesterday. But yeah. It's one of those ones that I think they'll learn from it, and you'll see the differences at Tynecastle, I believe.
You'll see. I'm sure you'll see a marked difference at Tannadice next Sunday, and then they've got Motherwell as well, haven't they? Boxing Day, and then obviously they've got Rangers on the 2nd of January. But yeah, it has to be infinitely better by the time they reach Ibrox. And it will be. I think the manager will address it. Cup finals are for winners.
Yeah.
And Celtic won today. Their 119th trophy. It's something worth celebrating, isn't it? And doesn't matter how they did it. History books will say they did it. And speaking of that, Ryan, that's the first time that Celtic and Rangers in a major domestic cup final has gone to penalties. The only other time it has happened was the Drybrough Cup final in 1974. 2-each draw, and Celtic won in penalties. Dennis Connican, the goalkeeper of Celtic, was the hero that day. He saved 2 kicks.
There you go.
So there you go.
Thank you very much to everybody for joining us on this show. Sorry we're a wee bit later coming on. We really do appreciate each and every one of you coming on. 800 people going live at, what's the time just now? 20 past 10. Absolutely incredible stuff. I'm sure you've got loads of content to go through with regard to this game, but we thank each and every one of you for coming on the show with us. Quick reminder to subscribe to the channel, completely free, and you will get notified when we go live with the morning briefings, pre-match shows, post-match shows, everything in between. You get notifications. Thank you to each and every one of you. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your night and just be happy knowing that Celtic have got another trophy to add to the cabinet. Cheers, guys, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you.